Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really fascinating turn, I think. We're going to be diving into the origins of the field that studies, well, the deepest mystery there is, the human mind. We're tracing the intellectual history of cognitive science.
Yeah, and this is a deep dive that's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we aren't just looking at the evolution of one single discipline.
Not at all.
We're looking at this grand convergence, a moment in history where you had psychology, philosophy, linguistics, even early computer science.
Neuroscience, AI.
Right, all of them. And they all suddenly realized they were wrestling with the exact same questions, and, they had to start working together.
Exactly. What struck me in the source material is that, while people have thought about consciousness forever, the rigorous scientific study of the mind, it really only crystallized in the last 70 years or so.
It's so recent.
Yeah.
And it was born directly from that collaboration. So our mission for you today is to cut through that mountain of information and just distill it.
Right. Get to the core.
Get to the three biggest ideas, the bedrock concepts that really define the whole field. Consider this your shortcut, to getting a real handle on the topic.
Okay. So we're looking for the paradigm shift that started it, the key metaphor that unified it, and then the framework that lets everyone play nice together.
That's the plan.
All right, let's jump right in. Big idea number one, the cognitive revolution. This was the moment, I guess, that the intellectual doors just swung open.
Absolutely. It was about forcing the scientific community to admit that, yes, the mind is accessible and, more importantly, it's absolutely necessary to study it.
To really get how huge this was, we have to look at what came before, right? The status quo.
You do. For decades. I mean, most of the early 20th century, psychology was just dominated by behaviorism. You had these towering figures, John B. Watson, B.F. Skinner.
And their core rule was, well, it was a pretty rigid one. Only study what you can directly observe.
Exactly. They treated the mind, memory, thinking, all of that internal stuff
Black box.
as an inaccessible black box.
Yeah.
You didn't worry about what was going on inside. You just focused on the inputs.
Yeah.
So the environmental stimuli and the outputs, the behavior that resulted from reinforcement.
To be fair, that framework was pretty successful for a while, right? I mean, for explaining simple learning.
Oh, absolutely. Things like operant conditioning, animal training.
Yeah.
It gave them powerful tools. The rigor was very attractive. But, by the 1950s, the cracks were really starting to show.
Because these simple stimulus response chains, they just couldn't explain the really complex things humans do.
Well,
I mean, how do you explain creative problem solving? Or planning for the future? Those things seem to demand some kind of internal mental process that behaviorism just refused to touch.
that is the critical point.
Yeah.
It failed on creativity. It failed on flexibility. And the thing that exposed that failure more than anything else was language.
Okay.
And this brings us to that seismic trigger moment.
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky's critique in 1957.
Right, syntactic structures. He basically looked at how behaviorists tried to explain language and just said it was fundamentally flawed.
Flawed doesn't even cover it. Inadequate. His argument was just devastatingly simple. He pointed out that children learn language way too quickly. And from a sample of speech that is, frankly, too messy and imperfect for it to be based just on reinforcement.
So it couldn't just be mimicking.
No. If it was just operant conditioning, it would take, vastly longer.
Yeah.
And kids wouldn't just spontaneously create grammatically correct sentences they've never, ever heard before.
So the data just didn't fit the model.
Right.
It forces you to conclude that the ability to create complex language, it can't just be learned. It has to be driven by something innate.
Precisely. Chomsky proposed that humans must have these specialized innate mental structures as sort of blueprint for language. And that idea, that single assertion, it dragged the complex structured mind right back into the center of science. The black box had to be opened.
Okay, that is a huge shift. But once the mind is back on the table, the old language of stimulus and response, it's not just insufficient, it's useless.
Completely useless.
So they needed a new metaphor, a new language to describe what's going on inside, which leads us, I guess, right into big idea number two.
Seamlessly. This is the computational theory of mind, or the CTM. And this is where the world of bits and bytes basically provided the conceptual blueprint for the brain.
And this blueprint, it didn't even come from psychology, did it? It came from, engineering and early computer science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You had this convergence with a field called cybernetics. There were these famous Macy conferences in the late 40s. A guy named Norbert Wiener, he defined cybernetics as the study of control and communication.
In both animals and machines.
In the animal and the machine. The core insight was just revolutionary, that you can understand a complex biological thing and a complex mechanical thing using the same principles. Information processing, feedback loops.
And around the same time, you've got these giants like Alan Turing, his idea of a universal computing machine in 36.
Yes. Showed that any kind of calculation could be boiled down to a set of rules acting on symbols.
And then Claude Shannon's information theory in 1948 lets you treat information itself, a thought, a word, a radio signal, as a measurable thing. It didn't matter if the system was made of flesh or steel.
So out of all that comes the computational metaphor. The mind isn't a passive bucket waiting for stimuli. It's an active processor.
It computes over internal representations. That was the key phrase.
Okay, let's break that down. Representations are, what, like mental symbols?
Exactly. The abstract concept of justice, or the spatial map of your house in your head, or just the mental image of a cat. And the computations are the rules, the algorithms your mind uses to manipulate those symbols, to combine them, compare them, draw conclusions from them.
And that became the shared language for everyone.
It did. But I feel like we have to address the big critique here, because someone listening is definitely thinking it.
That it sounds very reductionist, that it's just saying the mind is a computer. Right. Doesn't that strip away all the mystery and emotion of being human? And that's a crucial point. The early cognitive scientists, they would have argued that they weren't saying the brain is a Dell PC.
Okay.
They were saying that computation offered the best scientific model for the systematic nature of thought. It was a testable framework for how thought might be organized. It was a tool.
So it was a methodological tool, not a statement of identity.
Perfect way to put it. And the proof that this tool worked came in 1956. That was an explosive year.
You had the Dartmouth Conference, the birth of AI.
And you had experimental psychology showing it could now rigorously test these internal workings. Which brings us to the classic example, George Miller's paper, The Magical Number 7 ± 2.
This one is famous. It showed that our working memory has these strict, measurable limits.
Right, like a computer's RAM. It has a defined architecture.
Yeah.
But the concept that really sealed the deal for the whole processor metaphor was something Miller called chunking.
Chunking. So if I ask you to remember a long string of numbers, say 15 of them, you don't handle them one by one.
No, you can't. You'd fail.
Yeah.
You naturally group them into meaningful chunks, 3 or 4 digit units like a phone number or a year.
And when you do that, you're performing a really complex internal operation. You're actively organizing and transforming raw data into something meaningful.
You are behaving exactly as an active information processor should. And that passive stimulus response model, it quickly gave way to this idea that behavior is goal-directed. Miller and his colleagues introduced the TOTI model.
Test shot, operate, test, exit.
Yes. So instead of just reacting, the mind tests the world against a goal. It operates to fix any mismatch. It tests again.
And exits when the goal is met.
It showed the mind executes these sophisticated internal plans. And that really was the final nail in the coffin for the passive black box idea.
The TOTI model is a perfect example of that shift from passive reaction to active planning. Okay, so now we have, 7 different disciplines? All using this computational metaphor, but they're all looking at different things. The neuroscientist is looking at neurons. The computer scientist is building software. You could have chaos.
You could. And that problem brings us to our third and final big idea, David Marr's levels of analysis.
This was the framework that finally organized everybody.
It was the ultimate toolkit for interdisciplinary cooperation. Marr, in his 1982 book Vision, basically said that to understand any complex cognitive system, vision, memory, whatever, you have to analyze it at 3 distinct but connected levels.
Okay, let's lay them out. The first and highest level is the computational level.
Right. This is the what and why level.
Right.
What problem is this system trying to solve, and why is it solving it? For vision, for example, the goal is to take the light hitting your retina and turn it into a stable 3D model of the world out there.
Simple enough. Then you move down a level to the algorithmic level. This is the how.
Correct. How does it do it? What representations are being used? And what are the specific steps, the algorithms that manipulate them to get the job done? This is where a lot of cognitive psychology lives, running experiments to figure out the mind's hidden rules.
And then finally, the third level, the implementation level. This sounds like the wetware, the biology.
It is. This level asks, how is this algorithm physically built? What's the hardware? For the mind, that means neurons, synapses, brain regions. How do they actually encode and compute and store all this information?
The genius of this and why it unified the field is that it showed these disciplines weren't competing with each other.
Yeah.
They were just working on different floors of the same building. A neuroscientist working on implementation and a psychologist on algorithms are studying the same system, just at different levels of abstraction.
Precisely. Before MAR, you had people talking past each other all the time. MAR gave everyone a shared conceptual map. It showed how the hardware, the implementation, has to be compatible with the software, the algorithm, and both have to serve the overall computational goal.
And you really see the power of that implementation level just explode in the late 20th century with tools like PET scans and then fMRI in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. Cognitive neuroscience is born. Brain imaging gave us critical biological grounding. Now, the implementation level acts as a constraint. Any model you propose at the algorithmic level.
A theory about how memory works, for instance.
It has to be compatible with what we actually know about how the brain is wired and how it functions. The hardware now informs the software.
It's just amazing how quickly it all came together. You see the Harvard Center for Cognitive Studies pop up in 1960, then the Sloan Foundation pumps in money in 76, the Cognitive Science Society is founded in 79.
A permanent structure built in just 2 decades. It's an incredible story of what happens when you break down those academic silos.
It really is. Okay, so we've covered the revolution, the metaphor, and the framework. I think it's time for our study review.
Let's do it. A quick, actionable recall list to really lock these ideas in for you.
Perfect.
First, remember that the cognitive revolution was a necessary shift. It was triggered because behaviorism fundamentally failed to explain complex things, especially rapid language acquisition, as Chomsky so brilliantly pointed out.
Second, the computational theory of mind. It successfully redefined the mind, moving it from being seen as a passive receiver to an active, structured information processor that transforms, stores, and uses data. And it got that idea from fields like cybernetics and information theory.
Third, concepts like chunking, from Miller's magical number 7 study. Think of that as your concrete proof. It's repeatable experimental evidence that the mind plays an active organizing role which confirms that processor metaphor.
And fourth, Mar's 3 levels of analysis, computational, algorithmic, and implementation. That is the essential unifying framework that allows psychology, computer science, and neuroscience to all study the same system without conflict.
Exactly. When you put it all together, the history here is a story of really profound intellectual courage and this incredible interdisciplinary collaboration.
And the field, it doesn't just stop there, it keeps evolving. We're now seeing these challenging new ideas, like embodied cognition.
Right. The idea that thinking isn't just something that happens in the head, but is deeply shaped by our body's interaction with the world.
Or predictive processing, which is a huge one now. The argument that the brain isn't just reacting to what it sees, but is constantly making predictions about what's going to happen next.
And these new ideas are the next generation. They're building on, and in some cases pushing the limits of, those computational foundations we just talked about.
Which leaves us and you with the enduring mystery that drove the founders and still drives all this research today. How? How does the physical stuff of the brain, the neurons and chemicals, give rise to the subjective, seamless world of our own mental experience?
That's a big one.
Something profound to mull over as you navigate your own computational systems today.